And welcome back. A little bit longer than we've done before, the longest break we've taken since this has begun. I'm just going to give a few moments for people to join in. Hi, everybody. Hi, everyone. Like I said, welcome back. It's a little bit longer of a break than we've been used to at this point. I'll be talking about it. I hope everyone understands my decision to suspend Geek Speaks Greek for the week. I know and I'm super appreciative of the fact that many of you have come to rely on my thrice weekly little bits of geekery to kind of get through these rough times. And this week I felt it was really important that I took some time to do some learning and some listening. And I received a lot of really encouraging messages from a lot of you, which really meant a lot to me. So I feel like I made the right decision. And honestly, I wasn't even sure if today was the day to bring it back yet. But you know what? I wanted to take the shot. So thank you all for joining me. If this is your first time, allow me to introduce you to Geek Speaks Greek. I am the Geek, George O'Connor. Clearly speaking English, the Greek I'm talking about in this instance is I'm talking about Greek mythology. Every episode of Geek Speaks Greek, we talk about different personages from Greek mythology, be they goddess, god, hero, or monster, groups of goddesses, groups of gods, whole bunch of monsters, we're not sure what that guy is, all kinds of things like that. Today, I guess this is going to be our first, two-part episode. Last week, the last time I did one of these on Monday, we did part one of Zeus, King of the Gods, which is, beyond nuts that we hadn't gotten to Zeus yet, because, he's the guy. He is the center about which my whole series, Olympians, kind of, goes around. He's the king of the gods. But there's so much to do about Zeus that I wanted to revisit him again. And today, specifically, there was some stuff I wanted to revisit with regards to one of the roles we don't think of. Most people you ask, what is Zeus god of? They're like, lightning. It's like, yeah, he's the god lightning, but he's more than just lightning. He's the god of the sky. He's actually one of the gods of precognition, of being able to tell the future. But interestingly, a role of his that's really vital to his part in state-run religions in the ancient world was he was the arbiter of justice. He supported the order of things. And if you broke the order, if you broke the laws, so to speak, he was the one who dealt with that. And I want to talk about that aspect of him because it's kind of fascinating. But I'm getting ahead of myself. If you've ever seen one of these episodes before, you know that the people who watch and write in are some of the most talented artists around, and they're super duper, what's the word I'm looking at? Interactive. They're always sending in this amazing work. And somebody writes, he's the god of cheating on wives. Yeah, we're getting to that today too. So I have so much art to show you. And I know I say this a lot where I kind of I can't show you my kitchen when I keep showing you stuff. I literally, because we took a week off, I have way more art than you can show you. But I'm going to go back to some of the stuff I got if I would have done a show on Wednesday, I would have shown you just to share some of the stuff. And up front, we have the amazingly talented artist Yehi. She writes to us from Korea. Here is a painting she did of the goddess of grain herself, Demeter. I love the light shining off her. I love that her eyes and her hair and the grain are all that golden color. I'm actually kind of happy you noticed I did her eyes orange. I feel like a lot of people don't notice that. She has amber eyes. Fun fact, true story, my great-grandmother on my mother's side had amber eyes. She literally had this yellowish eyes. It was pretty intense. He also drew her idea of what Amphilos may look like. For the most part, if you're relying on my books, you haven't met Amphilos yet. Amphilos is the first love of Dionysus. Amphilos is a satyr. Their name means grapevine, and Amphilos dies a tragic death. I'm not going to say how yet. There's different accounts. I am going to say, he wrote something I don't know, maybe Amphilos has long hair, maybe doesn't have freckles, maybe has a beard. I don't know if I've mentioned something. This is remarkably close to what my Amphilos looks like. My Amphilos does indeed have freckles, is beardless, hair's a little bit longer and curlier, but this looks like you drew this from, so I think pretty sure, he's sneaking into my house and looking at my artwork. I don't know. So that was great. And then there was one more picture of Amphilos and Dionysus. Amphilos breaking a stick over his little goat leg. Well, actually, that Amphilos is way buffer than Dionysus. I gotta say, when I actually drew it, you'll see my Dionysus. He's not buff, certainly, because he's Dionysus, but he is a bit bigger than Amphilos, because he's an Olympian. Not yet. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, this is by someone who's never written into us before. I'm gonna apologize if I mispronounce the name, but I think the name is Aadi or Aadi. It's Aadi. And Adi's mom Sukanya wrote and said like how like great this like podcast has been for Ad, and so shared a bunch of work of his. So there we have Iris, Messenger of the Gods, Goddess the Rainbow. Love these colors. That's so good. And there's more. Like this is a build. Check out this. The 3 original sisters from the OG Olympians. Hestia, Hera, and Demeter. I love the character in their faces. There's so much about their personalities here. This is really, really great. And then, because you can't just do the sisters, also did the original 3 bros. There's Poseidon, Zeus in the middle, and Hades. What a great art style. I just love this. By the way, here is... AD is such a fan. Like, walking in the wilderness holding one of the books, can't put it down. It's like, you have the world of nature on. He was like, I'm reading Poseidon. Lay off, Mom. I love it. AD, I hope you keep... Or AD, first up, hope you tell me how to pronounce your name if I'm butchering it. Maybe I'm getting it right. It took... Yeah, he could tell you. It took me about, I think, 13 years for me to get her name right. But I hope that you keep sending in stuff because your stuff is great. I want to see more of it. So this one... I've mentioned Elia before. Elia is one of the artists who writes in almost every single episode and has just gotten better and better. And of course, this is Zeus. I love this Zeus. I love the color. I love the pose. I love his hair. His hair looks a little bit more like mine than usual. I love that. Looks like Elia went with the idea. I talked about how originally Zeus was going to have hair that got dark when they got mad. So like, you know, like a cloud, you know? So like his hair is kind of getting dark there. Elia, that's amazing. I can't believe how good you're getting. Like, it's exponential. It's so cool. Now this one, I have a feeling this is from an adult. This is from a person from Brazil. And their name, they give their name as Doc. There was another name, but they want to be called Doc, so I'm going to assume the doctor. This is their version of the Titanomachy. There is Zeus fighting Kronos. You can say Kronos because he's got the sickle. He's got the hourglass denoting his power over time. And then like look at this Zeus. This is so cool. And they were just like, yeah, I just discovered you. Want to send this in? I'm like, wow, great. Thanks, Doc. That's some beautiful artwork. It looks like, I am curious, did you draw this digitally? Or is this actually old school airbrush? I don't know, but it's beautiful work. So thank you so much, Doc. I apologize. It's really loud outside my window. It's been very loud outside my window recently. So here is a piece from Mishaya. Mishaya has been sending in stuff for a while. Mishaya has had to return to work as we're slowly reopening the country, which is good news, but she's kind of sad because she doesn't get to send as much stuff. But here is her drawing of Iris the Messenger. And as always with Mishaya, I love the way she draws faces. Like, she really captures some subtle expressions there. And there's just like this look of... We talked a lot. We kind of hypothesized about the motivations of Iris, and I thought like she probably had a lot of pride in her work, and you could really see that in that picture. So I love that. Thanks, Mishaya. Mishaya is another person. It took me about 30 years getting her name right. Probably still I'm saying it wrong. I say everybody's name wrong, even my own sometimes. Let's see here. This one, this is from Addie. Now, Addie is not only a great artist, has mastered the art of writing backwards because she's noticed that I end up holding these things backwards. So this is Hades training Cerberus. I love that your Cerberus is like 3 different dog head breeds. That's the way my good friend Mike Cavallaro, if you want to read his book, Nico Bravo and the Hound of Hades, his Hound of Hades, it's Cerberus, has 3 different heads. This one looks like it's a pug and a beagle, and I don't know. Oh, it's very loud outside. There's like car alarms going off. I apologize. It's the effect living in the big city. And Hades is up on a giant ladder saying, sit and good boy. You know, that version of Cerberus, I've told you all this, right? You all know what Cerberus means. This is one of my things I like to do when I go to a school and ask people, hey, do you know what Cerberus means? And like some kids like, devourer of souls. I'm like, no, sorry, man. And another kid's like, 3-headed. I'm like, that makes sense, but no. And there's like maybe kids like serpent. I'm like, clever, but no. Cerberus means spotted. Hades named his dog Spot. This looks like a spot, right? Or a bunch of spots. Spotted. I love it. Let's do like one more drawing because I have like a zillion things to show. This is from Little Cereal. And we had talked about when Zeus, in the last episode, when Zeus freed the Cyclopes and the Hecatoncheires from Tartarus, the Cyclopes, as way of thanks, actually gave weapons to the gods, the Olympians. Zeus gets his thunder, Poseidon gets his trident, Hades his helmet of invisibility, Demeter her cryosaur, her golden blade like a scythe. And then we were like, wait, what about Hera and Hestia? And I was kind of like, And I opined that probably Hestia just uses her flame because she's on fire already, which is a pretty good weapon. And maybe Hera with her power of controlling air, like she's made it so hard to breathe. But Little Cereal actually came up with some weapons. It looks like it's some sort of swinging mace on a chain for Hestia, which is pretty brutal. And then Hera, it's a little hard to see. Let me hold it up closer. Have you ever seen like when people have like those fans? I think it's from the Far East that are bladed, and you can use like these fans, and you're doing fan dance, but you're slicing people up. That's what Hera's got. I'm like, oh, that's really cool because the air thing, right? She makes like a wind. You're like, that wind's nothing. You look down, your arms on the floor. So I could show more. I could just probably spend the rest of this time showing artwork. But what I want to do is talk to you guys. What I would love, though, and I will show everyone's artwork still. Like, I'm just still playing catch up. We took a week off, and I do want to talk about that. If you want to send me some of your artwork to just show on the show, please send it to my email, georgeoconnorbooks@gmail.com. If you miss an opposite martial arts Hera, someone wrote, I know, it's like, she's like a ninja. I kind of love that idea. She should be, right? If you've ever missed an episode and you want to catch up, you could go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/user/George Olympians. People ask me if I'll be doing makeup episodes. I'm not planning explicitly doing that, but I'm pretty sure at some point I'll be doing a bonus episode or two, which you could view that way. And I do want to talk about that. So, unless maybe you're actually, a lot of people I know watch this in other countries. So, especially right now in the United States, there's been a lot of rough things happening especially in my neighborhood. I live in Brooklyn in New York City. There was a man named George Floyd who was killed by the police. You can watch the video. It's very upsetting. I don't want to talk too much about it because I know we have some young listeners here, and I want their families to be able to want to talk about this. And there's been a lot of protests about the nature of policing being done in this country and how it can be changed. And it hurt me a lot, like, personally, like, not to make this about me, but I didn't feel good during this time. I didn't want to be doing my kind of, hey, Greek myth thing. Even though Greek mythology is often not very funny, I try to have fun with it. And I really felt it was a time to, like, kind of, I'm super lucky to have this audience, to have all these people who tune in and spend their time willingly to listen to me talk about stuff. And I just asked, like, hey, maybe spend your time, like, learning. And that's what I did. I spent a lot of time learning. I went to some of the demonstrations. It's been an interesting week. I'll put it that way. I don't want to get too much into it. But it did strike me as very, in a weird way, fortuitous. Not fortuitous. That sounds like there's no good fortune coming out of this, unfortunately. It's a very sad time for a lot of people. It was very interesting that we had left off talking about Zeus, because I mentioned some things about Zeus that, like, on Monday, this stuff was happening already, but it hadn't yet boiled to the point where it's boiling it now. Zeus is very much a god of fate, in that he is the god who bent fate, right? So, like, I feel like this almost fated this. Because he is, and I use this in the picture, I with the caption advertised today's episode, he was the arbiter of divine justice. What does that mean? I think a lot of us who are a lot of religions nowadays, especially, there is the belief of a God who establishes right and wrong. And I've said this before in the episodes. Something I actually really like about Zeus is he's not very judgmental. A lot of current religions, if you don't believe in the exact God that is that's the source of that religion, or even that specific sect of believing in that God, you are considered like a bad person. Not a bad person. It's looked down upon. It's considered like something that needs to be fixed. Missionaries will correct you, or you might be called like an infidel, or you might be like, they might believe in an afterlife where you're punished, literally for not believing in a God. And Zeus isn't like that. But Zeus did exist, and one of his main functions, aside from the lightning and the sky and the having a bazillion girlfriends, which we're definitely going to get to, don't worry, one of his things was to kind of ensure the correct order of things, right? Wait with me here. This is a little bit of a long walk I'm taking. I'm thinking my thoughts of the past week as I'm trying to talk about with Zeus. So some of the roles that he played in this, and some of these we've talked about in episodes before. People who did something, a great crime, mostly like murders and things like that. Zeus is the one who often takes them off the playing field already. He's like, sorry, boom, you blown up. And then he would arrange for them to be tortured in, or to pay for their sins at least. I don't think the Greeks had sins, but you know what I'm saying, in Tartarus. We talked about this a little bit on last Monday. So probably most famous is Tantalos. He actually has a little bit of a starring role in my book, Hades. Not a starring role, he's got a bit. Tantalos was a king who decided to test the divinity of the gods. He questioned what was before him. And I feel like, honestly, it's important to question the knowledge that's put before you. The only way we'll ever grow as a people, and the only way we have grown as people, is when people actually question what has been established as fact before them. So Tantalus, who was a very smart man in some ways, decided to test whether or not the Olympians were truly divine. And he had them over for dinner because he was a king with some power, and he was related. We can put that out there. This is where he's not smart. This is where Tantalus is a horrible monster. Tantalus killed his own son, Pelops, butchered him, and prepared him as a soup. And that was the first course that he served to the Olympians. And his reasoning was, well, if the Olympians are all that, if they're truly divine and omniscient and omnipotent and all those other words that start with omni, they would recognize that this was, my son, which is like, man, Pelops, not Pelops. Pelops does have problems, he's dead. But like, Tantalus, you got some problems. And this course is served before the Olympians, who of course immediately like, that's people. You're feeding us people. Except for poor Demeter. This is when Demeter, right when Persephone, or Kore, had just been abducted for the first time. She's missing. She doesn't know where her daughter is, and she's so grief-stricken, she's not even paying attention. This is truly disgusting. She takes a bite of the soup, and she eats a little bit. It's like, bleh, bleh. Zeus, rightfully so, loses it, and he murders. Not murders, no. He incinerates Tantalus. Where once there was a Tantalus, there's now just ash. A lightning bolt is called down from on high, and he smites him. And Tantalos is set for one of the most famous of all punishments. We still see this punishment mentioned today whenever someone says the word tantalizing. Tantalus is set in Tartarus, where he's in a pool of water. And there's surrounded by these jagged, pointy rocks that he can't get out. And he's never fed, and he never drinks. And every time he stoops to grab water, the water immediately recedes out of his way. He can't get the water. And above him are all these grapevines. And whenever he reaches up for the grapevines rise. And he's just stuck in this position where he's tantalized by all the food around him and water around him, and he can never get it. And Zeus did that because he did something awful. He killed his son and served him as food. It's pretty hard to come up with something worse than that. Although, humans we have a pretty good record of doing awful things, so we've come up with worse than that. A very similar story, which has Zeus also doing punishment. There was a king named Lycaon. Lycaon was a king of Arcadia, which is like the realm, that's the part of Greece where like Hermes and Pan come from. And Lycaon had the same idea, Tantalus. He wanted to test to see how divine the gods were. And he also serves up his son, Nyctimus, yes. And Zeus, again, realizes that he's being served human meat because he has these powers. And in Lycaon's case, and I personally love this story, and I'm kind of bummed I never had to put in Olympians, but it's so close to the Tantalus story, he turns Lycaon into a wolf and his other kids. Like, they're the first werewolves. That's where werewolves come from. You ever hear lycanthropy? Lycaon means wolf. This dude is a wolf. He turns into a wolf man. I'm like, oh my gosh. I love werewolves, just so you guys know. I'm wearing a Bigfoot vs. Yeti shirt, but I love werewolves. It's my favorite monster, one of my favorite monsters. So I love that story. It's probably not getting into Olympians because it's almost exactly the same story as Tantalus. Tantalus is a more well-known story and it ties into Demeter. It's got a lot of cool stuff. But that's another one. Again, don't eat people. Zeus will punish you. Ixion. He makes a cameo, more than a cameo, he makes a couple appearances in Hades. He is the man who's bound to the wheel in Tartarus. It's always spinning. It's the kind of like the sun inside of Tartarus, a burning wheel. And Ixion, well, he did two stupid things. So first thing, Ixion, he kind of commits the first murder. And if I say it kind of, like, it's the first we know of, there might have been other ones before that. He takes his father-in-law and he shoves him into a fire and burns him to death. On purpose, which is a horrible thing to do. And this is an important aspect of Zeus, too. You may notice all these people mentioning about are kings. He is the keeper of divine law, but he also really is he's the one that makes sure kings don't abuse their power. He stops tyrants in their place, and he puts checks on power. And so this king does this. And sometimes people in high positions of power think they get away with crimes, and Zeus is like, I don't think so. And he calls him because this guy is actually, this is the first time he's dealt with this thing. He's like, wow, you killed somebody. That's messed up. And they bring him up to Olympus to explain his case. It's like, hey, man, I feel like this is really bad. I'm Zeus now. I feel like this is really bad. We're going to have to do something about it. And Ixion, who is, I think we can agree, probably not a healthy individual mentally, is kind of like making eyes at Hera the whole time, the queen of the gods. And Zeus notices this, right? And he kind of makes this like cloud version of Hera and like sends it over and he like attacks it. He's like, whoa, and like, he's a creep. He's a total monster. So Zeus blows him up with a lightning bolt, as he does, and makes sure it has Hades bind him to this wheel. So he committed the first murder, and he's punished for that. And then also he made the mistake of attacking Zeus's wife. Like, idiot. Like, just a bad person. There's Bellerophon. Bellerophon is the hero who tamed Pegasus and killed the Chimera. After that, for his victory lap, he flies up to Mount Olympus and he demands to join the gods. And that's an interesting one because he defies the natural order. He doesn't really commit a murder. He's actually a hero who was even helped by the gods up until this point. But he oversteps his bounds. And for that, Zeus blows him up. That one's, that's a little bit harder to relate to today's stuff. You might look at Prometheus as someone who's Zeus. Again, Prometheus had stolen fire from the gods and gave it to mortals. And again, this is Zeus, like you're breaking the established order, the natural order of things. Another one that's kind of interesting, there was a king named Salmoneus. Yeah, Salmoneus. He was the king of the Lapeets. The Lapeets are famous for fighting the centaurs. It was an old thing in art you would see a lot. It was like they were like a semi-mythical race of people. And Salmoneus, he actually made up this... that was Ixion who was the Lapeets. I should have mentioned before. Salmoneus was... he was a king of Elis. And he just decided he became a tyrant. And not only was he a tyrant, he decided, you're going to worship me as Zeus. So he goes into the temples of Zeus and puts his own head there. And he starts demanding the people worship him as a god. And he claims he is above reproach, that the laws no longer apply to him. And of course, that's not the case. And Zeus blows him up. So there's all these stories where like this happens. And I want to be clear here. I'm not claiming that Zeus... I do feel like this has a lot of echoes in the cries for justice that we're experiencing in the world now. There's a lot of people in power who've abused their power, and the people are trying to take it back. And I'm not so naive as to claim that Zeus would be a great ally for this, or that I'm not going to put... so much has happened culturally between the heyday of these stories and now. But what I do think is fascinating is this whole exploration of mythology in general. If you're here watching me, listening to this, you love mythology. It's my favorite thing in the world. It's probably one of your favorite things in the world too. It's fascinating. And there's so many reasons it's fascinating. It's fascinating because there's cool stuff and there's monsters and things, but there's a lot of stuff with cool things and monsters. The thing I've always loved about mythology is how it's really about humans trying to understand the world around them. These were stories made by people to learn more. And if you've watched my episodes, you'll know I talk a lot about, I'll say things like early antiquity and late antiquity. And we see how ideas of gods change over the course of time that the gods were worshipped. And some of it is people, like, these ideas evolve as people learn more. And like sometimes you see gods taking more influences, like the way Apollo kind of like took over being the god of the sun, or Artemis took over being goddess of the moon. And sometimes you see gods kind of surrender the things that they were in charge of. And you see like just the basic ideas behind certain deities change. And I think that's something that is a lesson that we can use. Because I think a lot of people are told something when they're in school, when they're a child, by a loved one. And it's not that you shouldn't listen to people, but you should always keep your mind open enough that you could learn more. It should never be absolutely closed off that no matter what that person says is absolutely right. Because new information will come up, and thoughts will change, and the world changes, and the world does change. If the ancient Greeks never questioned, and if not just the ancient Greeks, if we never questioned the way the world existed, we wouldn't have electricity. We wouldn't have indoor plumbing. We would still think that it was like a lightning bolt was Zeus throwing, that lightning was Zeus throwing lightning bolts at people. And maybe it is. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, I am going to say, it was pretty interesting that the Washington Monument was hit by lightning this past weekend. Did you guys see that? That was weird. About 1 billion people sent that to me. But it's just the idea, like, mythology is stories that we tell ourselves in order to understand the world around us. And that is something that's applicable beyond mythology. It's applicable to everything. Like we're always trying to understand the world around us. And something I try to make very clear whenever I talk about artwork, whenever I talk about writing, I talk about me. None of us are perfect. None of us know everything. It's always a learning experience. And sometimes when things happen in the world that are really sad, like I live in Brooklyn, like I said, there were people being brutalized outside my window. I could look out my window and see things happening that were wrong. And sometimes it's time just to sit back and listen. And just like the idea of Zeus changed over the millennia, and the idea of the Olympians changed over the millennia, and the ideas that everything's changed over the millennia, I kind of like to let things change for us too. That's enough of my lecture for now, I think. I'll probably talk more about it. This is the sort of thing, I've said this to my girlfriend a lot of times. What we're on right now, this period of intense learning and changing that it seems the entire world is going through, which also, how amazing is that? This is a problem happening worldwide, but the police brutality thing is a very United States problem, and the whole world is talking about it. We've never seen protests like this on this scale. It's amazing. But it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so for a week, I put all my energies, all of them, to the point where all I did was eat, sleep, and think about the protests and do things for the protests. But I need to create other things in the world. And I need to like feed myself with other material. And I love Greek mythology. It's one of the things that gives me strength, and hopefully it gives you strength too. So I wanted to kind of share this again and do Geek Speaks Greek again. All right. Oh, by the way, I have a happy picture of Dionysus because I'm like, we got to do something happy. Look how happy he is. He's like, oh, I'm crazy. I'm Dionysus. I also drew today, you may have noticed the picture. I was pretty happy. There's a very quick painting I did of Zeus like this. Like, do a happy Zeus. Because even though we're talking about Zeus, like, administering harsh punishment, I'm going to draw a little picture of Zeus because I got to draw a picture of Zeus. But we're going to kind of end on, like, what could be construed as a goofier side of Zeus. I don't remember which version. I think I just drew a headshot of Zeus before. So I'm just going to draw like kind of a cool flexing Zeus. I didn't get to draw him, honestly, as Olympians is drawing to close as a series. I feel like I didn't get to draw enough of Zeus kicking butt. Which is like weird, right? But like there's the scenes in his book, Zeus, where okay, it's back. We just had a poor connection thing. Yeah, also the internet's bad. Everything's bad right now. Where I kind of drew... I mentioned on last Monday's episode that my Zeus is kind of like a 21, 22-year-old surfer. Like, that's his body type. He's kind of like... they didn't have a California yet, but he probably would have had a Californian accent or the Grecian equivalent of it. But the way he literally rode lightning, like that was something that I spent a lot of time designing. He like holds on to it, and sometimes like the lightning bolts themselves, like you see his toes are just extended. The lightning comes out, and he's just jumping through the air, and there's a couple scenes where he's literally surfing the lightning. I didn't get to draw enough of that. Hopefully one day when we have an Olympians cartoon, there'll just be a lot more of that. Lightning coming out of his eyes. And I'm going to draw a smiling Zeus, because like I said, it's been a sad couple weeks. Well, week especially. And it's just been a hard time for everybody. I mean, school's over, and like, how was everybody's school year? It was weird. It was truncated. Everything was inside. This has been 2020. Thumbs down. Not a great year so far. But a lot of stuff is changing, and maybe we needed to have this bad time. So there's my Zeus. A happy Zeus. A Zeus exulting in his lightning. Maybe he's really happy because today is a day he didn't have to blow anybody up. Or maybe Zeus really likes blowing up people. I mean, it's probably pretty fun. Okay. Now, we've talked over the course of the 2 parts of the Zeus episodes, and this will probably not be the end of Zeus. Zeus is a well you can always return to. There's so many aspects of Zeus. I talked about, today we talked about his role as the divine arbiter of justice. Last time we talked about, I remember his role in the Olympics. We talked about his role in divination. We talked about his birth and his role in the establishment of the Greek gods. There's a part about Zeus that's probably the part he's most famous for, maybe even more so than lightning. It's Zeus's many, many, many loves. And what I wanted to focus on this, I was going to make it just a list of top 10, but I actually thought of more than 10, just off the top of my head. Here's the thing about Zeus. So Zeus has 11 billion kids with like a zillion women, which I guess 11 billion is more because he has more women, like kids than he has women that he's with. But he's a terrible husband. We've established this, right? This is one of the things he's famous for. Zeus is, he's terrible with this. And I'm treating this a little bit light. If this was like a person we knew, like, oh, this is my friend Fred, like he would be terrible. But because this is Zeus, because he's a mythological being, he embodies things bigger than mere humans, we could kind of make fun of this. I wanted to explore some of Zeus's weirder seductions. See, Zeus has been with so many people. He's like, so like, I'm just like, and like we've mentioned this before, Zeus could look like anything he wants. He looks like a 21-year-old surfer dude because he wants to be super hot. But, he's already an omnipotent god. It makes it too easy. So Zeus comes up with these really weird methods of seducing people. I'll start right at the beginning. This isn't the beginning. With his wife. He becomes a cuckoo bird. That's how he gets Hera. He spends all this time trying to seduce her unsuccessfully because she's like, no, you're a total creep. You ate your first wife, Metis. We know about this. You're an awful husband. There's no way I'm marrying you. He finally tricks her. It's the story in here. I won't get into it because I think we've talked about the story like 5 times. It's one of my favorite stories. But he turns into a cuckoo bird in order to seduce her. So that's pretty weird. Then his other sister that he had a kid with was Demeter. Goddess of grain. A lot of people don't realize this, but Persephone is his daughter. And according at least to the Orphic tradition. Now, you'll remember Orphic traditions, that relates to Orpheus. After Orpheus had his head pulled off, he became which is such a silly sentence, he became an oracle, and he told an alternate version of Greek mythology. And there's a lot of weird things in it. So one of the least weird things in there is, according to Orpheus, in his version of the birth of Persephone, Zeus and Demeter, they conceived her while they were snakes. They became snakes. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Snakes. Okay. That's like, she was a snake too, I believe. So that's like not as weird. Some of these, keep in mind, most of these, they're like still in a human or human form. And he's like some sort of weird animal or something, right? So, and let me do another goddess. This one I'm not even sure to count. Leto, the mother of Apollo and Artemis. We know they hooked up in Hyperborea, which was the land above the north winds, way up north, land of like amazingly talented people, like almost like unto gods. They were so much better than the average person. She was a goddess herself. She's, I guess a Titaness, right? We've talked about this. Like, are the kids of Titans, whatever. She's like, but she's of a high level of that. And we know that when she fled Hyperborea, when she found she was pregnant with the gods, she took on the form of a wolf. And I found one or two versions where it says that she and Zeus like conceived as wolves, which is like kind of cool because again, I like werewolves, but I'm not sure. That one's a little iffy. But like we could count that, right? So we got 3 so far. We have cuckoo bird, snake, wolf. Pretty good wide spectrum of the animal kingdom there. Now, let's move into his mortal or at least half-mortal offspring, right? Like his demigods. First and most famous is Heracles. And Heracles' mom was the mortal princess Alcmene. Now, he didn't take a super weird form with Alcmene, but it's still creepy what he did. In order to be with Alcmene, he became her husband, Amphitryon. Not literally, like he took on her form, right? He's like, hey, wife, how's it going? And that's why, so Heracles, his real name, as we all know, is actually Alcides, the son of Alcmene. But he has a brother named Iphicles, a twin brother, who is literally the son of Amphitryon. But so like there were these twins, but Zeus was the dad of Heracles, and Amphitryon was the son of Alcmene. So that's kind of like, I understand why I did it, but like that's gross. Zeus, you're a bad person. That's not good. Pretending to be someone else, thumbs down. Danae, Danae, I guess, the mother of Perseus, who, of course, is also Heracles' grandfather on the mother's side. It's really getting complicated here. Danae is one of his most famous ones. He comes to her in the form of a golden shower, like raindrops of gold that poured from her ceiling. So, like, that's weird. Okay, you've moved out. So, for those keeping track, cuckoo bird, snake, wolf. Somebody else's husband, and now actually water, golden water. So he's not even like, he's like, I've left the animal kingdom completely. I'm now a beverage. Then there's Europa. I saw somebody mention that. Europa, which is where we get Europe from, he carries her off in the form of a bull. The landmass they land on is Europe. That's where we get the name from. So there we have bull, going back to the animal kingdom. Leda, often confused with Leto, but not, because Leda was just a mortal woman. Leda, he very famously is with her in the form of a swan. There are some weird old sculptures and paintings of this. You could look them up, but ask your parents first. And with Leda, now this is super weird. She gets pregnant, and when she gives birth, because Zeus was a swan, she lays an egg. She's a lady. She's a human. She's not like a duck. She's not like Daisy Duck or something. She lays an egg. And when the egg cracks open, there's 2 babies in it. Castor and Polydeuces. The Dioscuri, we've talked about them briefly. And Polydeuces is the son of Zeus. And he's mortal. And Castor is not. I said that wrong. Polydeuces is immortal, like he's a god. He can't die. And Castor is mortal and can die. And also in some versions, Helen of Troy, face that launched 1,000 ships. She was also, she's definitely the daughter of Zeus and Leda. She's also born in an egg, and her sister Clytemnestra, same deal. Helen's like the one, like she's like the daughter of Zeus, and Clytemnestra is the daughter of, I forget what his name is. So, okay, then there's Antiope. He takes, in this one, Zeus goes into the realm of mythological. He takes on the form of a satyr. So he disguises himself as like a little goat boy. And that happens in Cyprus. And if there are any of Montreal fans here, you know the song, Wraith Pinned to the Mist? There's the line, I'll be the satyr in Cyprus, you'll be the bride stripped bare. That's in reference to that. When I first heard that, I was like, oh, geekery. I love deep myth geekery. So he becomes a satyr in that case. There's a woman named Pythia who's kind of famous, not for much, except for the fact that Zeus seduced her as a dove, or more funnily, a pigeon. Let's just say a pigeon. Scrap dove. It was a pigeon. Can you imagine that? Like some dirty New York City pigeons. Like, hey, how you doing? Callisto. Callisto was... Oh, wait. Actually, before I get to Callisto, because now we're really taking a turn. There's Ganymede, who is the cupbearer of the gods. And he's one of Zeus's male loves. Zeus carries him off as an eagle, which is probably the most on-brand one for Zeus, because one of his symbols is an eagle. So here we finally have him bringing an eagle into it. And eagles are majestic, but he doesn't even give Ganymede a choice. He just straight up picks that dude up and, you come with me to Olympus. Callisto was a nymph who was one of the followers of Artemis. And like all the followers of Artemis, she had pledged herself only to be single, to only be with, no one. But here's the thing. Callisto secretly was in love with Artemis. And so Zeus, and this is despicable and gross, Zeus he takes on the form of his daughter in order to seduce Callisto. And it's just like, man, you have no morals. How are you, that's awful, right? And then it gets worse for Callisto because Hera finds out, and we know we've seen this story before. The two gods warring over a mortal. Instead of Hera beating Zeus up, she really can't because he's immortal. What would it do? She turns Callisto into a bear. So that's kind of a bummer. Who else? Okay. And I'm at the end of the list. I was going through my mind. My favorite, the weirdest of all the stories I've told you. And I think we can all agree, these are a bunch of weird stories. Have you ever all heard of Uri Medusa? And we've heard of Medusa. We know Uri means wide. So this means wide queen or something. I don't know why. Uri Medusa, Zeus comes to her and seduces her in the form of an ant. Not your Aunt Nancy or whatever. Not like a human, like a bug. He's like, hey, how you doing? I'm going to steal your picnic. He comes to her as an ant. And they have a child together. And this child is the first of the Mirmadans. The Mirmadans were the nation of Greece that Achilles was a member of. Their name literally means Ant-Man, like the superhero, or ant people. And they were this entire nation of people who were half god, half people. They have it in there. There's half god people, but the god was in the form of an ant. So they're ant people. And their armor, they had kind of glossy black or brown armor. So they kind of looked like ants. And it's one of those stories that came after. It's weird, right? Even back in the day, people were like, that one's weird. How do you do that as an ant? I'm a guy, I'm pretty good about keeping my head down to the pavement when I'm walking and try not to step on bugs. But I've still never seen an ant and be like, So I think I got all the ones that I wanted to touch. Other ones will occur to me. What else do I want to talk? I wanted to talk really quickly maybe about Deucalion and Pyrrha, who were these two. So just to wrap this up, Zeus as the god of, the arbiter of divine justice. One of the other things you could do that was a horrible affront was not to be hospitable. And he and Hermes in disguise came to this valley, and they were turned away from the door of every single person who came there, all these very wealthy people. And they come up to this old couple. I think I've told this story here before already, so I'll do it really quickly. If not, I should do another episode for it. Deucalion, Pyrrha, the old couple in love, poor as heck. They have a goose. That's it. They only have a goose together. And even though all these rich people had turned away Zeus and Hermes in disguise as beggars, they let in Zeus and Hermes and they take care of them. And they offer to share what meager possessions they have. They have half a carafe of wine, and wine was like water back then. It was what you drank. You didn't drink water, you drank wine. And they're sharing it with these two beggars, and they're even we're gonna go out, we're gonna kill our only goose. I don't know what we'll do for eggs from now on. I guess we'll just die. But Zeus and Hermes reveal themselves as the gods and spare them. It turns out they went to this valley because there was about to be a giant flood, and everybody else is killed, but they spare these two because they were hospitable. And that's another important role of Zeus. I don't feel like I gave that enough help there at the end. At the end, I might have to do another episode, a Zeus part 3 at some point. Probably won't be Wednesday. I think we've kind of hit Zeus for now. But what I think I'll do, as my first day back, you'll notice I'm sweating profusely. I had to close the windows because it's so loud. How about we take some questions? Just hear what people are thinking, things they want clarification on. I'll see if anybody has said anything yet. I think, he's saying this about the Mirmadans. They must be very hardworking people. Yeah, I imagine so. Although I don't think actual ants, I don't think they're all primarily female, except for the men. Men ants, lazy bums. Look them up, drones. They just, they grow wings, they fly around a day or two, they try to mate with the queen, and they die. And then the rest of them they're taken care of. They're kind of bad. Let's see. Ganymede got bird-napped. Yeah, he did. Zeus and Hermes are very close. No. Asking the question. Yeah. I've often said that I think Athena is unquestionably Zeus's favorite, but Hermes would certainly be number two. Hermes, even more so than Athena, Hermes is his right-hand man. I think Athena, Zeus respects Athena to such a degree, and I think he knows unequivocally she's very smart. She has seen through me since she was a kid. She knows everything about me. Now, whether or not he's put that together, that she's literally grew up inside his head, I think there's a little bit of an intimidation there. He wouldn't boss her around. But with Hermes shows up as this upstart kid. You can see it in the book Hermes. He's like this hyperactive little super intelligent baby. Zeus gives him a lot to keep him out of trouble. And Hermes certainly doesn't seem to have the ambition of Athena does. I think on some level, Zeus is aware that Athena was meant to replace him. He very famously, I mentioned this up front, bent fate in order that she wouldn't. He did what no other god has ever done and ever could. He changed the fates. And Hermes just isn't like that. Maybe Hermes could certainly outwit Zeus, but he just doesn't want to. He doesn't have those aspirations of power. It's not in his interest. And I don't think Athena is power hungry either because of the way Zeus bent fate, but I think she could definitely overthrow him if she decided to. The idea of having POV characters, was it for granted from the beginning of the work? So what I think you mean here is, if you read each of my books, for the most part, I think there's maybe one or two books where I have an omniscient third-person narrator where there's not an actual character who's designated as the speaker. But for the most part, in Athena, it's narrated by the Fates. In Poseidon, it's actually narrated by himself. That one's a little bit different. In Aphrodite, it's narrated by the Charites. And I think the question is, did I always plan it that way? Yeah, for the most part. It was good for two reasons. It's really nice, just as a storytelling tip, to free yourself from the burden of the first person when you're writing a book. You could do a lot of stuff in a story if you have another character telling the story. You get to tell a lot from that character's point of view. You get to tell a lot of stuff that the main character wouldn't even know. It just gives you a whole other avenue. It also, because I strive to make Olympians an educational series, and that's why I've been very fortunate that libraries and teachers and everybody have taken this book so kindly, because there's a lot to learn here. I got to cover more mythological ground that way. I'm working right now, I literally just took a break from drawing pages of Dionysus, and it was a sequence I'm drawing where specifically Hestia is telling the story. I get to tell Hestia and Dionysus together because Hestia is the narrator. And as that, we learn so much about Hestia. I was actually showing pages to my girlfriend, and she was like, Hestia is my new favorite goddess. Because I get to reveal a lot about Hestia's personality, things that have been always hinted in Olympians till now. But because now she's getting the chance to speak, even though it's not her book, so to speak, it's not her story, she's telling the story of Dionysus, you learn so much more about her. So it's a way of learning more about the gods and goddesses. This is true, actually. I didn't mention this one. In one myth, Zeus turns into a replica Hades and stays with Persephone. Yeah. That's actually an alternate version for the birth of Dionysus. I didn't even get into that one because that's just gross. Also, Orphic. The Orphic ones are weird. When was the last time you were in Greece? Did you get to go to Olympia? So, okay, I've never actually been to Olympia. Last time I was in Greece was in, it's been a while. I think it was 2006. I've been back to Italy a bunch of times, but I haven't been back to Greece in quite a while, I think. I might be forgetting. I hope not. I had a lot of travel plans for this year that are kind of due to the pandemic that are I was going to go to Norway because I'm working on Asgardians, the next book. I wanted to go back to Greece because I really want to go up Mount Olympus because I've never done that. Although I guess that's actually Macedonia. And I wanted to go back to Italy again because I just love to go to Italy and just eat all the foods. Let's see what else we have as questions. I think I said this last week, but I made this character named Soul, and he is also the worst husband ever. That's cool. I know you've told us before you're planning to. I hope we see some of your stories soon, CVQ Llama. And just keep in mind, though, Soul is actually already a Roman god. That was their equivalent of Helios. So, I don't know, maybe you're doing that on purpose. I imagine you could probably make a good case that Helios was also not a great husband, because, most of them are not. What else do we have here? I think in other myths, Themis and Eurynome are the wives and queens of Zeus. That's absolutely true. In fact, you'll see specifically Themis, because she is also a goddess of wise counsel, much like Metis. There's that really famous painting. I think it's by, man, I'm going to blank on his name. It's an awesome painting. It's like the most diesel looking Zeus in the world. He's like wide as a truck and he's got this crazy curly hair and he's sitting there on the throne. And it's actually a scene from the Iliad where Themis is actually trying to appeal to him and she's holding up the corners of his mouth trying to make him smile. And she's like this little figure like, oh, but she actually is this figure you see in art a lot of times who is there to give counsel alongside Zeus. And so like Hera's his queen, but he still does have, I wouldn't say, he certainly doesn't have other wives at that point. He's not a polygamist. He's just a cheater. And you could work out chronology-wise, like who came first. Like Themis seems to have come before he marries Hera. But he still has these people in his orbit, so to speak. They're people who like that are around him in various capacities. Let's see what else we got. Is Hades probably the best god husband? I'm going to look at my off-camera myth poster real quick. With the possible exception of the story of Mentha, who was in one account, was a nymph that he had an affair with. And when Persephone discovered, Persephone trampled her to death. And Mentha is the Greek word, and we still use it, for mint. And that was the explanation for why when you step on a mint plant, it smells nice, because Persephone crushes her, and I guess it smelled good. With the exception of that, he does seem to be a pretty... And that story, I'm kind of like, okay, that's a weird one. He does seem to be a pretty loyal husband. So I would say he's probably the best. I'm looking at everybody else up there. Oh, no, wait. Hephaestus, the poor guy. He tries. He just was married to the wrong lady. But, once he's with Aglaia, it all seems to work out a lot better. And actually, he has a good point. Ares could be the best husband. Aphrodite knows. Yeah, maybe. Like, that's an interesting idea, right? If Zeus hadn't come in there and just so jealously and just tried to make, he feared Aphrodite. We've talked about this. Her power was so intimidating to him. He immediately married off to Hephaestus. Hephaestus just got there. He's like, look at me. I'm not up to this challenge. But Ares and Aphrodite seem to have a real thing. And yeah, I don't know that Ares would have cheated on her because he's certainly single-minded. I don't think Ares is devious. One of the things I do like about Ares is he's very straightforward. He telegraphs very much. Like, he's not going to sneak up on you and do something. Like, that's not his style. He's all blustering. He's just right in your face. He's an unstoppable force. He's a blunt object. I don't think he would be a cheater. So maybe Ares. That's actually pretty cool. I think Eros is pretty good. If we're talking like Eros Psyche, that is sort of like a big love story thing. Like later, young Eros is just a punk. That's why I like Hades and Hephaestus better. Yeah, they're kind of like two of the nicer gods. I mean, if it came down to where you actually had to literally meet the gods, like, I mean, it would be, I always advise people, like, you don't want to meet the gods. Even if they're being really well-intentioned and you're being well-intentioned, the chance of something going wrong is very high. But yeah, I feel with Hades, probably not much is going to happen. And with Hephaestus, he's probably pretty cool. He'll probably just be like, oh, hey, how you doing? Just grab a beer, sit next to my fire. Let's see. So people agreeing about Eros and Psyche. Yeah, that's probably a pretty good one. Is Epimetheus immortal? Yes, he is. Epimetheus, for those of you who don't know, he is we went back and forth when he's a Titan. He's like a second-generation Titan. He is the brother of Prometheus. Prometheus' name means forethought. He could see the future. Epimetheus was afterthought. Like, he second-guessed himself all the time. But yes, he is immortal, just like his brother Prometheus. We know Prometheus is immortal because that poor guy spent a few hundred years, maybe 1,000 years, strapped to a rock in the Caucasus Mountains having an eagle eat his liver every day. And because he's immortal, that doesn't kill him, and his liver grows back. It's kind of like Wolverine from the X-Men, but like way worse. Also, he didn't have knives coming out of his hands. So little Eros was a hellraiser. Apollo would know. Yeah, I mean, little Eros he was an awful punk. He needed to be spanked. Oh, there's actually a really cool painting It's not actual ancient Greece, but it's a picture of it's Ares just whooping Eros, because like he's like, you are just a little punk, and you can see his little arrows on the floor. I'll try to find that one and post it up somewhere because it's a really funny painting. Great question, Greek mythology fanatic. So did Pandora die and Epimetheus live without her? Now, Pandora's an interesting character, right? Because in some versions of the myth, she's actually the first woman, which makes no sense, because where did people come from? What she is certainly is she is a artificial woman. She's a constructed woman. We know in most versions of the story, she has a body that is created for her by Hephaestus himself. And the name Pandora means all the gifts. All the different Olympians came down, well, not all of them, just some of the main ones, came and gave her different abilities and things. I would actually posit, because she is not a woman born of mortal people, that she's actually literally a construct of the gods. And be that how you think of that, maybe she's just a magical being, maybe she's like the Vision from the Avengers, I would suspect that she is also immortal. Or if not immortal, very long-lived. Like, just would keep living indefinitely or near indefinitely. Because, I mean, some people do interpret her. She's kind of like an automaton. Like, which was they didn't invent the word robot yet. That's a Czech word. It didn't come about until centuries later. But she's essentially a robot. Like, she may be, like, because we know that Hephaestus was so skilled in the arts of creating fabrications that he was able to make automatons, like non-living people that moved and breathed like real people. Like, you couldn't tell the difference. So it kind of makes sense that she might actually be, well, she is a synthetic form of life. It's kind of cool. Could we do one on Diomedes? That's an interesting one. And actually, I did have plans for a week where I would do epic heroes, right? I would do an episode on Achilles, an episode on Odysseus, and then the third day, I'm like, am I going to do Diomedes? Because he takes center stage for a big chunk of the Iliad. Or would I do Aeneas, who is the star of the Aeneid? And basically, I couldn't decide, so I decided to shelve that idea for a while. But maybe I will do Diomedes, because he's kind of a cool character. And I'm assuming you're talking the Diomedes who is in the Iliad, the one who is blessed by Athena, and not Diomedes who comes up against Heracles, who has the man-eating horses, because there's not much to say about that guy, so that dude got eaten by his horses. Well, there, I just did Diomedes that second. He got eaten by his horses. He does have a lot of stories. Since Helen is a daughter of Zeus, did she have powers beyond her beauty? That's an excellent question, because she doesn't seem to. She does have the amazing beauty, right? So that in itself could be considered a power, I suppose. Like, this is a beauty that even if you take Aphrodite out of the scene, like in Aphrodite's machinations, this is a beauty that literally made people lose themselves for her. And we are told unequivocally she is the most beautiful woman. Not as beautiful as a goddess, perhaps, but the most beautiful, like, mortal woman in the world. So that in itself would seem to me that she gets compared to gods in that the beauty itself maybe counts as a divine aspect of her. Also interesting, like, okay, so we know Zeus was with Leda when the Dioscuri, the Castor and Polydeuces, were born. He doesn't seem to come back with her again, so maybe it's almost like, bear with me, I'm just throwing out some weird ideas here. Maybe it's almost like a vestigial bit of Zeus that stayed there and just made the beauty and like the weird egg thing, but like it wasn't actually, like, I don't know. I'm just coming up with crazy ideas at the top of my head. So Thanatos, that would be a good one to do. Ajax, Agamemnon. Yeah, I could probably do multiple ones about the heroes of the epic myths. I just so noticed we only have a minute left. So I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you all for joining me again. Again, thank you all for your letters of support when I decided to, for a week, just kind of shelve Geek Speaks Greek. And barring something terrible happening in the world, which I just knocked on cardboard. I don't know why I did that, but hopefully it won't happen. But I should be back again on Wednesday. Haven't figured out what I'm going to talk about yet. But just keep watching my Instagram. Thank you all for tuning in. And I'll be seeing you all guys again on Wednesday. Meantime, keep listening, keep learning. Do what you can to make the world a better place, please. And if you act in anger, try not to. Just try to learn. Try to be accepting of other people and their differences and to learn what makes them that way. I'm saying this is not even easy for me to do. It's definitely not easy for me to do. And I'll see you on Wednesday. All right. Bye, everyone.